The Mountaintop Podcast show notes can be found at www.mountaintoppodcast.com, where you can also subscribe to the newsletter and get a 25-minute call with me for free. Also, you're invited to join the Mountaintop Summit Facebook group. Look forward to seeing you there.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Well, okay, here we are once again for another big episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast coming at you from San Antonio. You can find us at Scott McKay on Twitter, Scott McKay on YouTube, Real Scott McKay on Instagram. Hope you all find me there. And today we're going to talk about a bit of a different subject than we usually do. My guest is named Brad Browning, and he's the co-founder of Love Learnings Media out of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, which is just a gorgeous part of the world. And he is a breakup and divorce expert. Brad, welcome, man. Good to have you here.
Scott, thank you. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going great, man. Always going great on these shows. I have to get myself up, get plenty of sleep, make sure, I'm not hangry when I get on these shows so I can have some consistency.
Absolutely. I've been training for 3 weeks already, so I should be good to go here.
For this very show.
You betcha. Been in the gym every day.
Well, you know what, man? We had to postpone this because you up and got sick on me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I do apologize for that. I did completely lose my voice, so it would have been a bit tough to hear if I'd come on an original date there, but thank you for postponing, and I'm happy to be here now.
Yeah, a podcast with a guy with a voice is always infinitely better.
I think so, yeah, right, definitely.
You betcha. Well, what we're going to talk about today may not be what you think we're going to talk about today from a guy who's used to helping guys get their ex back and get divorced couples back together again. I know a lot of you guys may not be in the throes of something so brutal right here and right now. So we're going to take preventative measures today. We're going to talk about the warning signs that a woman is about to break up with you or how to stop a breakup before it even starts. And you know what, Brad? Here's the thing. Most of us, I would dare say nearly all of us, are going to date a whole lot of people before we finally marry one. And even the one we marry, when we break up with her, it'll probably be a few more tries here and there before we figure out what we really wanted in a woman the second time around. The answer to that is not our dick, by the way. And maybe for a lot of guys, especially early on after the divorce, right? But you know what I'm saying. We're going to, you want more puns? We're going to go through a lot of women before we get to the right one. So that means there's a lot of breakups. And, we may not be the one who's doing all the breakups. I would dare say most of the guys I've talked to get broken up with more than they do the breakups because guys tend to be optimistic.
Absolutely.
We don't want to hurt women's feelings, et cetera, et cetera. So what is the frame of mind that you think guys should have even when we're out there meeting women? The first thing that comes to mind for me would be stop thinking every woman you're ever going out with is going to be quote unquote the one before you've even met her, right?
Absolutely. And I think even just focusing on a specific goal that you're looking for in a relationship, especially early on, can also, just be a mistake generally. I mean, you should be looking for fun, for a good connection, rather than looking for the soulmate that you're going to spend forever with. I mean, just go out and have fun. And then that'll happen someday, as it happened to you and I both, I guess. So yeah, that's definitely an mindset. And I think just generally, a lot of guys, they overthink stuff. They get too worried about, is this going the right way? Is this working out the way that I want it to? And then that sort of creates this cycle of, insecurity and needing validation. And those are, obviously toxic attraction killers as well. So it spirals from there. And then, the desperation gets even higher and it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Man, you just said so much in so little time. First of all, first dates are supposed to be about, do we get along? Are we having fun here? Not, are you my future wife? So Once we start loading on the pressure like that on our first date, not only on ourselves, but the woman's going to feel that and she's going to be thinking maybe not already, right?
Exactly. And then all of a sudden you're overthinking and you're worrying because, hey, that first date went great, but now what happens if she says no when I ask her out again? Is that going to mean that I'm not going to, be able to marry this soulmate that I've found? So putting pressure on yourself by having, goals or objectives or whatever, I'm not into that personally. And I think if you can take that attitude generally in relationships, you'll be a lot better off. You'll have a lot less problems with insecurity.
What would you say to guys who start seeing patterns develop? Like, it seems like women are always breaking up with me and they're always doing it for this reason. I mean, is it that all women are so horrible and they're all such bitches to us for the exact same reason? Or do we need to look in the mirror or some combination of that?
So the first thing about that I would say is that, to be honest, I don't think it's wise to read too much into what an ex is telling you or the reasons for a breakup. A lot of the time, your ex is not going to tell you the whole truth, or they're going to, flat out lie when you're, asking why did you want to break up? Why did things end? Why are you not happy anymore? So I would really be cautious about, assuming that whatever your ex is saying about the reasons for the breakup is actually true. If you are confident that it is true, and this pattern does seem to be repeating itself, then obviously, yeah, you got to look in the mirror. There's something going on. And that's actually really hard to do, right? It's difficult to see yourself and your relationships from an outside sort of perspective when you're in there, all the time. So.
Yeah, no doubt. I think if you're experiencing a lot of women not wanting a second date with you, and the pattern seems that they don't want to tell you, for example, that might be what we call a hidden detractor around here.
Exactly.
I had one guy who batted his eyelashes like a woman when he talked and didn't even realize it, and he lost a pretty heavy-duty opportunity with a San Antonio Spurs cheerleader that way.
Damn.
So then he finally called me, and he hired me for an hour face-to-face, and I said, I'm going to give you all the value you need after knowing you for 5 seconds. And certainly that was it. But, a lot of guys also, they have stuff going on where women aren't going to tell you, and you need to read the body language. Like if they're just getting up angry or they're perturbed, or, maybe you're doing something pushy or creepy and you're not even realizing it.
Absolutely. Creepy is definitely one that I think is, or you're trying to play a game, you're trying to sort of do something that you think is the right way to make a girl fall for you or to create attraction, which is actually doing the opposite. So I think, Scott, a lot of the time, a lot of guys are trying to be something that they're not, or they're trying to do what they think is the sort of the right way to build attraction, to flirt with a girl, to make her like you, when often that what they're doing is actually counterproductive and it's doing the exact opposite. I think this is especially true with some of the, the old pickup artist type of strategies. Guys think, if I wear this ridiculous hat, or if I, playfully joke about her nose or something, then I'll create attraction through that. But really, women are not into that kind of stuff anymore a lot of the time. And, you just look like a dork, and you look like you're trying too hard.
I'm not sure any women really were ever into that, ever.
No, probably not, to be honest, man. I know we sort of see eye to eye on that pickup stuff. But yeah, totally. I doubt they were. A lot of the good ones anyway.
So yeah, man, if you're seeing a lot of patterns on first dates where women don't want to see you anymore and you're not hearing what they are, that's one of the things that I'm pretty good at helping you diagnose, and it'll change your life. And I can probably help coach you through that. But Brad, man, let's say you have a girlfriend and you start feeling like things are slipping a little bit. She's not so stoked to be around you anymore. Is that really how it starts for a lot of guys? Is there a beginning to an end? Or for most guys, is it more like it seems like everything's going fine, and then one day she's just gone?
No, I think there's usually signs. It's just that most guys don't pick up on them until it's too late, or until they've already created sort of a deep hole for themselves and dug themselves in deep. My general philosophy to that kind of situation, Scott, is like, basically, I just tell guys, that's just a sign you need to back off even more. You need to stop caring. You need to, just generally invest less in this relationship, because a lot of the times what happens is guys will start to get worried. They'll see those warning signs, and they'll worry that the relationship is collapsing. They really like this girl. And what they really need to do is just sort of cool off and back off and not be too, needy, clingy, not show too much insecurity, because those are sort of the natural reactions that a lot of guys have to that kind of situation where things feel like they're falling apart. But to answer your original question, Scott, I think there is signs almost always.
Okay, so a lot of guys, what they do is they meet this incredible woman, they fall in love with her, they start getting a little obsessed. Next thing you know, the woman is his life purpose. And women are creeped out by that.
Totally. And if you're at that point, you've already dug yourself in a deep hole.
Right.
And the natural reaction is going to be to try and, cling even tighter and try to make sure that you hold on to what you've got. And that is exactly the opposite.
Like the old 38 Special song, just hold on loosely, but don't let go. If you cling too toughly to her, you're going to lose control. So essentially
exactly.
What you have, right. So what you have is a situation where if it's a neediness, clinginess problem, you're a little too obsessed with her. And guys, you know what that is? It's the immaturity factor. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you're man enough for her, that means you're man enough to have a purpose and a passion and some motivation and ambition beyond your girlfriend, or else, she's just going to think that's kind of a little bit off. She's going to start feeling like the man in the relationship, like she's got to carry you. And that is not going to really ignite that femininity very much. You're supposed to be the provider and protector and enabler of her feminine nature. And if she feels like that role is reversed and she's got to carry you instead of you carrying her in that respect, you're doomed. So yes, hugely. If you're needy and clingy and you start seeing that you're losing her, that fear of loss, which, by the way, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we've said that on the show.
Exactly. It is. No, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a cycle. And it's, unless you can overcome that sort of trait in yourself, then you're never going to dig yourself out of that kind of hole. And it's going to keep happening.
So, right. Exactly. So if you think you're losing her, you're going to lose her. But a lot of times it's like a slow burn where you start being a little needy and clingy, and she may even be responding subconsciously to that because it just doesn't feel very sexy to her that you're like that because of what we just talked about. Then she starts pulling away a little more. She shows a little less interest. So you're thinking, man, if this isn't working, it's like my old employer, Lucent Technologies. If this isn't working, we should do twice as much of it. So you're going to be even needier and more clingy. And next thing you know, you've lost your girlfriend. But neediness and clinginess isn't necessarily the only problem that's going to drive a woman away. Let's say you are a mature man and you've got a good woman. Could the opposite be the truth? That you're not doing the right things to keep her around, that you're not doing enough? I mean, obviously, I think a lot of times when guys don't invest enough in a relationship, or they don't know how, or they don't care to, or it isn't enough of a priority, they shouldn't be surprised when the woman leaves. Right?
Absolutely, Scott. And I would say in my experience, that's probably less common than the previous topic we just talked about, but it definitely does happen. And I think those are also easier to fix a lot of the time because, you basically just have to look at what the relationship was like in the early phases when things were going great, when she was totally into you, and basically just get back to that and become that guy again. And often that doesn't mean, changing yourself into something that you're not or faking it. It just means, being the same dude that she fell for in the first place, which is a lot easier than overcoming, underlying traits or insecurity or whatever, complicated things like that.
Well, it's a great formula for keeping a woman to keep doing what you did at the beginning. Because if you did that, it worked because she's there, right? When you stop being the guy she expects you to be, then, that's when the wheels start falling off. And here's the thing. You talked a bit earlier about authenticity. If you were faking it at the beginning and she bought it, how the hell are you going to keep that up for the rest of your life? You can't.
Totally.
Right.
Well, I was just going to say there's a fine line between, going too far and playing too many games and sort of making yourself into something you're not, which is like essentially what you're just talking about. But also you sort of do need to, in my opinion, play the game a little bit. You have to flirt and do things that maybe are not natural to you in the early phases to make a girl fall for you, want to be with you. But that also means you can't take that too far and become someone you're not, like you said, because then all of a sudden you are going to build a framework for a relationship that's just never going to be long-term viable.
Well, the way I think about it is kind of like, try it, you'll like it. Maybe you're not used to flirting. Maybe you're not used to helping a woman have fun and making her laugh. But man, when you see the results of that, when you see a woman who you connect with naturally, who's one of you, who's someone who just gets you and vice versa, and you flirt with her and she flirts back, when you give to her and she gives back, all these new sensations that you're going to feel that you may never have felt with a girlfriend ever before, man, you're going to love it. And it's not going to be work long term to keep it up because you're getting such good response from it and you're getting more practice at it as you continue to do it. To me, that's kind of one of the secrets to a great relationship.
Exactly. And I think it's not just something that needs to happen in the first, month of it when you're with a new girl. These are sort of skills. I mean, flirting is kind of a never-ending thing, right? I mean, attraction has to be maintained. And so to some degree, I think some of those things, that, yes, they're absolutely fun and you should learn them, but there's a good reason to do so, which is, long-term relationships, they require some of that stuff on an ongoing basis. At least that's been my experience.
And yeah, I would agree 100% with that. Now, there are these times where you think everything's going really well, and then all of a sudden, boom, she's gone. My first thought there is, there's another guy who swooped in.
Absolutely, that could be it. And all of us, right at that point, when you realize there's probably maybe another guy involved, and that's the reason, I think that the natural reaction is all what most guys sort of do instinctively is also opposite. They try to focus on this new person. They try to, like I said earlier, try to tighten the grip and sort of be even more controlling and make sure that she doesn't slip away or that you are still on her radar. And really, I mean, there's really nothing that you're going to be able to do to convince her that the new guy is not, the one for her or whatever. You basically just need to amp up your own self and your own qualities and become the better option. So that's one that I think a lot of my clients have huge problems with.
Man, that sounds so passive to so many guys who are listening. Can't you just go and knock him out or punch him in the nose or something?
You definitely could. It's harder to attract a girl from a jail cell. So,
I'm asking this facetiously because first of all, I'm not even sure it's going to freaking work. I mean, great. You go get your jollies, you get your rocks off knocking this guy out, but it doesn't change her feelings towards him at all. Those are still there, regardless of what you did physically acting out. The only thing that changes there is now you've got a record, but she still is going to be after him more. Matter of fact, If the fight's really good, she's going to love him more for standing up to you because that deck was already stacked against you anyway. So, it's like a lose-lose.
Exactly. And it also puts all your cards on the table for her to see, right? Like, I mean, why, if you're so invested and you're so desperate to get this relationship back on track, why would you do that kind of thing? You're showing her that you're basically willing to bend over backwards for her, that she's your life. You'll do anything to keep her around. And that just is totally unattractive, right? That's not an attractive look. So yeah, I mean, punching the dude, it might work. It might feel satisfying, but it's not going to be a long-term solution for sure.
Well, what if you don't want to be passive though? I mean, what's the strategy? She's starting to hang out with this guy a little bit more at work. So let's say you're not exclusive with her and you're in competition with another guy, but you feel like this is going really well with her. I mean, you got to be able to do something other than back off and wait it out. What's that going to be?
Honestly, Scott, I think a lot of the time that doing anything is going to be counterproductive in that situation. So I think being an even better version of yourself, maybe pulling back a bit and inducing a little bit of jealousy if you can, just sort of make her basically worry that you're not necessarily going to be there. So like if he starts seeming more interesting, then, you really just need to shift that back onto yourself and become the better option by, sort of pulling back a bit, inducing a little bit of jealousy, and essentially just making yourself look like a superior option for her romantically. And a lot of the time, jealousy is going to be one of the most effective ways to do that. So Scott, I think if you don't want to be passive in that situation, jealousy, inducing a little bit of jealousy. I mean, I do think pulling back and sort of just making sure that you don't seem overly desperate is important. But I think jealousy, if you don't want to be passive, is one option to sort of make her worry that you're not always going to be around should things not work out with this new guy. But I do think that it's important to make sure that you don't show all your cards and just make it look like you're desperate for her, because really that's totally unattractive.
Well, one of my early mentors, whose name I'm sure you're probably familiar with, is Homer McDonald. Yep. And he would have told you, just start dating some other women.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if it's as simple as that, sometimes obviously that's not necessarily a safe option if there's sort of an implicit understanding that you guys are, serious or committed. But yeah, no, totally. That's jealousy, right?
Yeah, that would be after the breakup happens.
Yeah, well, and put some pressure on her generally. Whatever your method is, that's just going to add to the mystery and make sure that you don't seem like you're always going to be there as a backup option for her.
Well, hold on a second. You said pile on the pressure there. That seems like it would be a bit contradictory to your advice earlier about not doing anything. So what kind of pressure are you talking about?
Well, I think not doing anything necessarily. I think not doing anything is more, it's basically just don't react in the way that is natural for a person in that situation to react, which is to sort of try to clamp down, try to be more controlling, try to take control of the situation by, saying to her, hey, don't be interested in other guys, or, he's a loser, don't talk to him, that kind of thing. It's just more like you're putting pressure on her by showing that you are not going to, run after her. You're not going to be a backup option. You're going to essentially just find something new. You're going to be gone. You're going to disappear.
You're the prize. You're not.
Exactly.
You're not
and you are
loss.
the prize. And that mindset is obvious, as you know, Scott, that mindset is everything, right? You are the prize. You're the man.
Well, here's the kind of relationship that lasts, is a relationship where both people think they're a prize and the other person's a prize.
Well, exactly. And truly believe it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So what kind of relationships tend to break up and what type of relationships tend to stay together? Because, if you have some of this 20/20 foresight before you even get into it with her, maybe that'll help alleviate any future problems before they even get to be problems, right?
Maybe, absolutely. I mean, some relationships are just going to run their course, though, right? I mean, sometimes it's not gonna be a fit.
So, like, for example, Brad, I'm sure you've been to weddings. When you go to a wedding, you've got to be like most of us. You're either thinking, man, these two are perfect for each other, or I give this marriage 6 months.
Yes, definitely.
What are the factors that make you either cringe or applaud these two getting together? Maybe we can learn something from that in terms of whether or not we're getting into the right type of relationship that's going to last, that's built to last, that's going to go the long haul, before we start making mistakes. Because sometimes that field vision is better sensed from a third party perspective compared to when we're on the field playing our own game. And man, I can't tell you how many guys I've seen get what I call clouded by beauty vision. I mean, I've heard a guy tell me before, oh, but you don't understand. She may be a nut job, but man, that pussy is good and I want it for the rest of my life. I mean, you know, those are just really bad ways to think. When you go to a wedding, what are you looking for? How do you know these two are going to be in it for the long haul? What are the warning signs?
So, Scott, I think one of the things is I like to see at least some dating history on both the parties in the that are getting married. I mean, I'd like to see people who've got some life experience, who've dated a few other people, and who know what they're looking for, right? Because it's impossible to say, hey, this is the woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with if you don't actually know what that perfect woman looks like, because you haven't dated enough, you haven't been with enough women to really answer those questions for yourself. So that's one thing I definitely look for, is experience and understanding what both parties are looking for. Another thing I think is just, you know, you have to be yourself, at least enough that you can sort of maintain who you are in the relationship for the long term. So if you're pretending to be this alpha, you know, super dude, and you're putting on the, you know, pickup artist vibe in the early stages of the relationship, you just can't do that forever, at least not to the same extent. So I think it's important to at least be yourself, and be comfortable around your partner as yourself, if you really want it to last. So I think those are two. Does that answer your question, Scott?
Absolutely. I mean, these guys have heard me tell the story before about a couple who I was coaching who had been dating for 18 months and ran into all kinds of trouble, and he didn't even know her last name.
Fuck. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
I mean, people who get married and don't even like each other. I mean, they're already arguing at the wedding. People who are just poor character, sleazy people who are incredibly narcissistic. I mean, if you're optimistic and generous, and guys have heard me say this, you have two legs of a three-legged stool already in place for a great relationship, great marriage. The third one being, we get each other. She's one of me. I think like her. She thinks like me. Guys will write me and say, oh man, my girlfriend said this. I have no idea what she meant. What did she mean? It's like, well, why didn't you ask her? And he'll always go, I could never do that. Bad sign. Okay.
Totally bad sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get each other. We trust what the other one's thinking. We can complete each other's sentences, blah, blah, blah. Optimistic, generous. Okay. I want to give. I'm not a narcissistic taker. I'm not trying to have someone in my life so I can leech every possible bit I can from them. Optimistic. If someone leaves for 40 minutes, they weren't out screwing someone else. They were doing something nice for me. You know, they were making our life better. Optimistic generosity. Of course, those people are easy prey to narcissists. But when you get two of them together, it's a great relationship.
So interesting you say that, Scott, because one of the things I was just thinking as you were saying that is, you know, a lot of the time that when people get themselves into that kind of situation where they're not in that sort of relationship, but they're getting married anyway, a lot of the time I find that's often due to fear. It's a fear that you may not ever find the right one, the soulmate that you're looking for. So you just sort of say, well, I better just keep what I've got because she's okay. She's good enough. So I'll marry her. Right.
Yeah. Never settle. Right.
Never settle. Exactly. And be confident when you're getting married that you're doing it not out of worrying that there won't be another one next that you could, you know, be with or be as happy with. And again, I think experience in previous relationships is definitely a big part of that.
Yeah, having options, which comes from being more attractive. Gentlemen, you know, here's the cherry on top of this sundae, okay? Any relationship that's built on desperation, you may as well have built on quicksand. That's not a foundation to build it on. Well, Brad, we're running out of time, and I want to give these guys a chance to know a little bit more about what you call the X Factor Guide. So when I send them to www.mountaintop.podcast.com/Browning, BROWNING, what can they look forward to?
Well, so Scott, the first thing they're going to get is a free video presentation that's going to teach them, you know, a lot of sort of sneaky psychological techniques that can reattract the girl that they want in their life. And then, of course, they can also sign up for my X Factor program on there after they watch that video. But the video itself shares a lot of psychological tips that a lot of guys don't know about, but it would really help them rebuild attraction with a girl they want to be with.
So when you say sneaky psychological tactics, you're saying that in a marketing sense, not in a don't be authentic sense, right?
Well, I mean, a bit of both, because I do think when you want to rebuild attraction, sometimes you get to a point where you have to use a few sneaky techniques, like sort of, things like reverse psychology, saying things that are going to trigger her, curiosity about you, things like that. But generally, yes, I mean, it's tips that you wouldn't think of yourself that are going to help you reattract her. Any girl that you've let go and who slipped away or is just still slipping away. These are the tips that you need to employ to get her back and to make sure that she doesn't, disappear into the abyss for good.
With some other guy.
Well, hopefully not. That's not going to happen if you go watch my video. So There you go.
So here you go. You've got a situation where I'm sure most of the guys listening to this are not in that situation right now because it's something that's a bit of an urgency market. But, guys, first of all, file that away. Second of all, this is the kind of insurance policy you need to have before you need it, like any other insurance policy. The way to do this is to go get your hands on what Brad's talking about. Learn all these ninja tactics that are going to be necessary someday before you're too emotionally wrecked to be able to even wrap your head around it. Because here's what I know, and I don't even need you to agree with this because you've seen it before too. I've got a guy on my team who does what you do. He's been on this podcast before. I call him the punt returner on my coaching team because, man, those guys are the most brutal ones to coach. It's like getting hit hard every time you coach one of those guys. Because first of all, they are desperate to get their ex back. Second of all, they do the exact opposite thing you tell them because that's what makes sense to them. So much of this art of getting a woman back is completely counterintuitive. And I know that already.
Totally is. Absolutely, yes. Scott. And but you know what? I find that sometimes the most rewarding type of client to work with because, I can say things that to you and I might seem, logical or obvious. But when you're in the heat of the emotions and you're in that situation yourself, you obviously can't necessarily see that kind of stuff. So I find it very rewarding to help people like that. And, oftentimes you see success, which is awesome.
Well, hey, if you are a punt returner in football, those are some of the most rewarding touchdowns, man, running it back for 85 yards. The crowd goes nuts.
Well, totally. Right. You're going to make it on the SportsCenter top 10 tonight. Absolutely. If you have an 80-yard return.
There you go, man. So by all means, guys, go check this out. Now is the time to do it. Not when you need to cash in on this insurance policy. Get your hands on the X Factor guide. Go to www.mountaintopodcast.com/Browning. And Brad, man, thank you for a great and very fast-paced, content-rich show. I always appreciate that. Thanks for dropping by.
My pleasure, man. I appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. And guys, listen, if you're not on my newsletter yet, head to www.mountaintopodcast.com. I tell you that every time, but you really are missing out on something that I'm first handing to you for free. Second of all, is fluff free and is really valuable to your quest to be better with women. I don't care whether you're married, single, in a relationship that's going well, in a relationship that's not going so well, which is very possible if you're listening to this particular show and the title caught your eye. Whatever you're going through, whatever your goals are with women, head to mountaintopodcast.com, get on my newsletter list, and you can also click the red button in the upper right-hand corner and talk to me for free. That's 25 minutes where we can kind of figure out where you are, what's going on, and see if it's a good fit to work together. Maybe not. Maybe we just shoot the breeze about what's going on in the world of being a man these days, and you can help me plan better shows by giving me your input. That's cool, too. Either way, go to mountaintopodcast.com and get on my newsletter and talk to me for 25 minutes. And until I talk to you again next time on this show, this is Scott McKay from San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.